With us now, Jagdish Bhagwati of Columbia University. He and I could go for 3 hours right now. And here's a book. This is a short book. Bhagwati and Alan Blinder with that op-ed on Bernanke today in the Wall Street Journal. Read this book. It is the clearest statement on our fear about China that there is. I want to bring up a quote from this book. It quotes one of Lisa Murphy's most important people. We may soon turn to PBS and find a requiem for free trade composed and performed from England by Sir Paul McCartney. Good to have you back, sir.
Thank you very much,
Give
Tom.
us an update on the fear of losing jobs to China. Is it any worse than 08 or 09 when you and Professor Blinder wrote that book?
No, I think it still persists vis-a-vis China, but I think it's ebbed, reduced in relation to other countries, like with India, for example. I think people increasingly realize that it's a two-way flow. You've got outsourcing, but you've also got insourcing. And I think that's really what is making a lot of difference. A lot of Indian firms are investing here. There are firms which are actually discovering that, in fact, for semi-skilled or more skilled kind of jobs, you can actually, you don't go to India. You go there for back office operations and things like that, which are relatively unskilled. And for skilled jobs, people actually are coming out here. So like with manufacturers, it's a two-way thing. We call it intra-industry trade.
Secretary Clinton made a splash on the campaign trail talking about fair trade. How does Jagdish Bhagwati define fair trade?
Well, there are different ways of looking at it. I think the most important one right now is, which really is, holding up negotiations like on Doha, the multilateral trade negotiations, is that in every sector, the other countries have to be as open or as close as we are. This is what we call sectoral reciprocity. And the problem is you can never have it like that. And I think this is something which goes back to my student Paul Krugman, who actually pointed out...
Are you in speaking terms with Professor Krugman right now? That's a break exclusive. Bhagwati and Krugman speak.
Oh, yes. There's a joke about somebody saying, those two guys don't talk to each other. And so the other guy says, oh, no, I just heard them shouting at each other. But with Paul, I have a good relationship.
We're going to rip up the script here, folks, out of the blue. I want you to explain to my viewers worldwide why Paul Krugman won the Nobel Prize. Most viewers think he's a guy that writes for the New York Times, and he happens to have a day gig at Princeton. They don't know. His first paper was on Star Trek at Yale. Forget about that. Why did Paul Krugman win the Nobel Prize?
Because I think he was one of the most creative people in international trade theory. And I think, the specific point, reason might have been something political, like he does. He writes on the liberal side, but that's not sufficient. That may explain the timing, perhaps, because the Nobel Prize committees are all sensitive to the rest of what's going on. But his work is fundamentally important.
Atlantic Charter, World War II, GATT, all the courage out of the 50s to break down the blocks is the reason Doha failed and trade has come to a stasis. Is it because we've come so far with the good news that the next good news is just too hard to accomplish?
I think this is sort of the theory about, you weeding a garden, and the worst weeds are left over till the end.
Right.
If you're smart.
We call that French agriculture.
That's right. So I think there is a bit of that. But I think right now, I think we Americans have lost a bit of faith in trade. And I think under Obama, you see that a fair amount. Because the people around President Obama are rather skeptical of trade.
Alan Kruger's skeptical?
Alan Kruger should be a force for good, I think, in my opinion. Okay. But the unions are so afraid of trade that it's undermining their jobs and their. They used to talk about wages, now they talk about jobs.
Yeah. Let's come back. I want to bring up too much information right now because I think this is a great study. Off the Bloomberg, great series. Bhagwati says calm down. You can see the chart down here, Professor.
Yes.
Bhagwati says calm down. China exports to the U.S. That's the stuff they send us because they stole our jobs. Now let's go to the next chart. It's a chart of Palooza. We go to the next chart. And that says, Bhagwati says, calm down even more. There's China imports from the U.S. That's our stuff going back to them. Now, they export a lot more to them, I would suggest, than we import to them. But it's amazing how the dialogue is one-sided, isn't it?
I know, and actually, you see, one of the things we've been worried about is our bilateral balance, which you were showing there. But I think if you take sit back a little bit and you see, actually, because of infrastructure and spending, for example, which they badly need, because both India and China actually are moving ahead with very rapid growth. It is coming down a little bit right now because of the world demand situation, but they are not going to be accumulating reserves down, as much as they used to, and a lot of it is now going to be spent on infrastructure spending. And when you do that, first, the workers there are going to be buying goods from us. Two, infrastructure spending means they're going to buy GE, Caterpillar, Siemens, and so on.
But then how do you suggest to your critics, and there are many, how do you suggest that we quote-unquote make or protect American jobs, that we protect our industries, and the multiplier effect that comes off that?
But I think, you see, when you get, you're talking about the short run now, because what I'm saying is, in a matter of a couple of years or so, the shift in the internal spending of China and of India too is going to create demand for our goods. So we are going to be exporting more, and particularly in the manufacturing sector where you have construction equipment, etc. So we need to relax a little bit. Two, the more they send us components, for example, and this is something with General Electric, for example, if it buys cheap components from abroad, inefficient components, right now, that means its export capacity and potential increases. This is the point we used to make in developing countries.
Second and third order effect.
Yeah, because almost 90% of the exports, of the sales of GE are abroad.
Right. Let's bring up an op-ed here. We got to get your and the time we've got left on this. Ian Bremmer, I thought a smart note today in EFT. Greece is not leaving the Eurozone. Don't listen to the doom and gloom merchants. Greece's ratio of debt to GDP may have topped 1,000,000%, but its Eurozone status remains 100% secure. Bhagwati on this disaster that is the Euro. Jeff Sachs was sitting here foaming at the mouth about it a couple of weeks ago. Bhagwati on the Euro. What do you think?
Oh, I think it's a political decision. And I think, we can keep complaining that they haven't really stepped up to the plate so far. But the point is, nobody has a crystal ball which says, like next week or in a year from now, we're going to enter into this very dramatic downfall. Now, I think given that, it's only rational that you keep saying, okay, I'll do what seems necessary. If it happens, then I don't have to do the more dramatic stuff.
Just 30 seconds left. I was speaking with a member of the IMF from India the other day about the state of domestic politics in India. Is it a new India that we can look forward to in 5 years, or is it the same bureaucracy?
Oh, no. I think now, because of these many scams which have been discovered and so on, I think the government is now doing what hasn't done so far, which is to try and build up the institutions to deal with governance. Because we were a democracy, so everybody assumed that was good enough. But the point is, democracy also needs institutions to, say, fight corruption. For politicians, for instance, to raise money legally like they do in this country. Right. Because otherwise they'll go and be corrupt and raise money that way. So there are a variety of things which are now coming up. And I'm going to India in December to talk about this at a major lecture.
Good. Thank you so much.